Hello and welcome to the Media Leader podcast. I'm Omar Oakes. This is a special edition of our Roundup episode coming to you a bit later than usual in the week because in case you haven't heard, this week is Cannes Lions, the biggest global event in the media and advertising calendar. The Media Leader team was out in force this year and we're eager to tell you what we thought about it. So I'm joined by our deputy editor Maria Yu and reporter Jack Benjamin, both of whom experienced Cannes for the first time. So hi to you first, Maria. So what did you think? What did you think of the festival?
It was really overwhelming when you first get there, but it was really beautiful as you would expect, and just massive. The whole thing is huge. So I enjoyed looking at all the sports content. There were lots of famous names at Stagwell Beach this year. Shaun White, Roberto Carlos, I saw them. I didn't see Eric Cantona, and also the Kelsey brothers were there, although disappointingly to all of the women there, Taylor Swift did not make an appearance. Generally enjoyed soaking in the atmosphere as a first timer, really shocked by just how much resource and work must have gone into build all of the cabanas and all the stands, the beach areas. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a huge sprawling thing that there's a massive palais where all the awards are handed out and the main content is, but just all along the beach there is just this huge sprawl of things, and it's a lot of people use the word overwhelming when they go to Cannes for the first time. Jack, you're nodding to that. What did you think at your first time at Cannes?
Yeah, it's funny. I was speaking with Rak Patel from Spotify, and he asked me, like, what was one word I would use to describe my first Cannes experience, and that was the word I picked. I picked overwhelming or overwhelmed. There's just so much on. I mean, I think I spent almost all my time walking up and down the Croisette, meeting with different people, trying to talk with random people who I had never met before, didn't know where they were from, trying to get see what they thought of it. It's really cool. I mean, I think it's an interesting mix this year, and I'm sure we'll get into this, I know it's a festival primarily about creativity, but there's so much tech and media around the event now, but it felt like a really big mix of, like, we had some really fascinating creative work that was really being showcased, but then you also had all of the meetings behind the scenes seemed like they were talking about more tech, adtech, AI type of things. And you have lots of big tech companies, of course, with their big stands on the beach or just across the street in different hotels that apparently are very famous, and well, it's all beautiful. So yeah, that was my first impression, was overwhelming, but there's lots of different things going on.
Well, I think that's it. It's just become so big that, thousands and thousands of people go to Cannes each year, and no two people probably have the same experience. My first time was in 2016. I actually bumped into a colleague yesterday in the press room, and she hadn't been to Cannes since my first time in 2016. So she'd been away for 8 years. It was her first time in 8 years. And she thought it hadn't changed at all, which was quite surprising. But, I think if you could quantify it, there's even more ad tech than there was before. If you look at all on the beach, you've got these cabanas and beach areas, little offices, much more retail media. Retailers like Kroger were there for the first time. Chase Bank Retail Media Solutions was there as well, and there's lots more ad tech. And to your point, Jack, it's a festival which still works really hard to promote the best in class advertising, creative advertising, and the work that ad agencies do. But there's no getting around it. There is just ad tech everywhere. And for us people that cover the media side of the business, I suppose we're more sensitive to that than others. Traditionally, media and tech are at the beginning of the week, and towards the end of the week are the more creative things. So it's a choose your own adventure landscape of Cannes. Speaking of media, so Maria, let's talk about the media owners that were at Cannes this year. Which of them did you see there? What were they doing?
So a couple of ones I want to talk about. First, Amazon had the Amazon port right next to the Palais. Beautiful space, and they've got activations for all of their different divisions. So like web services, Twitch, etc., IMDb, that kind of thing. And obviously, as is obligatory for all of these activations, everyone had their panels, etc. But the activations at Amazon was really fun. In particular, they had a little AI portrait booth using their own Bedrock tech. So it paints you in a kind of retro sense. So I got one done, and it's basically the creepiest thing I have ever seen in my life. It's definitely got Murder on the French Riviera vibes to it. I'm sure lots of people have a similar postcards now sitting in their suitcase somewhere. The other one was Meta. They have a big beach area, but they also did a press event, which I guess for them, the highlight was about their increase in return on advertising investment for marketers this year of all their AI-led ad products. But for me, the interesting thing was Nicola Mendelsohn talking about threads. So she was very insistent that there's no monetization yet, and the yet is doing a fair bit of heavy lifting there. And she did specifically say, basically, Meta, their strategy is to aim to make sure the user experience is the best it can be before they do anything else. So, i.e., it's definitely coming. There will be advertising coming to Threads quite soon.
It reminds me a bit of like The Social Network, where that scene was like, you don't want the party to end too soon by introducing advertising. Remember this scene from the film? And it strikes me as the exact same strategy of, Threads is still growing at pace, and they probably don't want to risk that yet by putting in ads, but they will definitely come.
You've already got, what's the latest figures, 3.24 billion users across the Meta platforms. So you wouldn't think Threads is going to be incredibly additive in terms of users, but it's just an extra ad buy for extra activity that would be associated within the Instagram platform. Threads is, of course, part of Instagram. We, of course, had Elon Musk grace, if that's the right word for it, grace the festival this week in conversation with Mark Reed on Wednesday. Walking back, I think it's fair to say, his comments at the end of last year about how advertisers could go fuck themselves if they tried to censor content on Twitter, which I don't think is how advertisers would describe wanting more brand safety standards. But that definitely, I guess, Threads is the threat that's lurking as far as X is concerned. Jack, same question to you. Which media owners did you see there? What were they doing?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with other social media companies as well, actually. Especially Reddit and TikTok had sit-down conversations. We'll be publishing a story on that as soon as it's ready. It was interesting. They were the quote that I got from Stuart Flint, who I spoke to. He's TikTok's head of global business solutions for Europe and Israel, was that we're not trying to compete against Google, and yet there are these strategies that they're taking that are sort of going after a similar type of thing. And this is obviously my own opinion, not Stuart's opinion explicitly, but both TikTok and Reddit describe sort of going after the product discovery mode of, there's a lot of money to be made in helping users find products and brands promote themselves to users that are looking for products. And historically, I've always sort of felt Google search was a good way in to this. You would ask a question of on Google of what's the best hair dryer, or just searching for travel tips. Social media companies like TikTok and Reddit are increasingly going after that type of behavior, and they want to lean into that, and they want brands to lean into that. And so even though there's entirely separate conversations, of course, with both those media owners, there was a common thread of we think people come to the platform to not just be entertained, but also to find information about things that are helping them in their day-to-day lives. And that includes, of course, goods and services. So they both talked about that, both talked about AI. AI was the conversation kind of everywhere. I felt like it was constantly getting brought up. And yet also, I didn't hear a whole lot new in terms of like philosophically what we need to be doing about AI. There's some new releases. TikTok has a new feature with AI using to dub in different languages the different content that content creators are doing. That's just one example. There's a few other AI announcements that, of course, came out over the past week. But in terms of the conversation around AI, it was still like, we need to make sure we're doing this responsibly and labeling everything. And it's kind of the same of what we've heard over the past now year and a half or so. And sport was another thing. I know Maria already mentioned it, but the importance of sport for TV came up a few times. When I went to NBC Universal, they had a cocktail hour, and that was the whole theme, was like, how important is sport? Especially in an era where everything is so personalized online, that sport is something that is still universal. And that can be useful for brands that are wanting to speak to a wide audience.
Yeah, I think sport was actually, perhaps should have expected this with it being the Olympics so soon in France. We had the torch going down the Croisette on Tuesday morning. I saw it from the vantage point of the Group M rooftop in top of the Martinez Hotel. Jack, you were down on the ground watching it actually happen, weren't you?
Just as I arrived, yeah.
What a welcome. And Stagwell, the Stagwell sport beach that they had, just this litany, they had their own procession of global sports stars. Just on Monday alone, they had like Maria, did you see this? Roberto Carlos and Eric Cantona and Megan Rapinoe and people from other sports, which I don't watch, but if I gather from America, they're very famous indeed. Huge names. And it's interesting Stagwell is an agency group, but it's interesting when we talk about the media owners and what were they there, what were their presence, you can always see what they're trying to sell about themselves. So Pinterest, if you were walking up and down the Croisette, you would have seen that if you walk past the Pinterest space, just a queue of kids, just as a huge line of kids just constantly outside Pinterest. They had this manifestival get up where you could get a tattoo done, you could get a marble effect done to your trainers, all sorts of arts and crafty things that Pinterest is known for. But they're really keen, as we've written about previously on the Media Leader this year, Pinterest is very, very keen to promote the fact that 40% plus of its users are Gen Z. They're very sensitive about being labeled as something that middle-aged women might be using just to, or just when people are getting married, they put on their wedding dresses there. They're very keen to show the breadth of the user base and growing on Pinterest. Netflix as well. Netflix, again, was at the rooftop of the JW Marriott Hotel and very keen to promote all the content that they do. So they had a Bridgerton space, Lupin meeting rooms, everything heavily branded with Netflix stuff. And to your point about sports as well, I caught up with Amy Reinhardt, the ads chief at Netflix, and it was very clear that not just live sports, which is something all the streaming platforms are going to be, we suspect, heavily more involved in, global bidding wars for sports franchises, competitions, but also more and more sports documentaries. They have found it is a huge draw to subscriber retention to do more sports-focused documentaries, and you're going to see all the streaming platforms who've got some already get more into that, I suspect, as well. So yeah, we learned a lot about the media owners just by virtue of what they're trying to sell to the global advertising community at Cannes. But let's talk about the work itself, because there was work, and the Media Lions category, which we take very seriously. We want to see, we have a regular feature called the Media Plan. We're very interested to shout about what best-in-class media planning, media-focused advertising looks like. Jack, you covered it for us this year. It was won by the Media Lions Grand Prix was won by an independent media agency, Gut. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Gut in Sao Paulo, for Mercado Libre's Black Friday campaign, Handshake Hunt. The campaign, which inserted QR codes into TV content whenever there was a handshake on screen. That's because a handshake was essential to the brand's logo. You attended the press conference, Jack. What did they say? Why did this win?
Yeah, I think they wanted something bold and non-conventional and something that used sort of technology to reinvent how media is done. And so I think it actually fit the bill. And it's definitely an impressive campaign. I had I don't think I'd seen the use of QR codes on TV in this type of way. Not only did they put a QR code, as you mentioned, they scrubbed basically 2,000 handshakes across programming on TV Globo, which is Brazil's largest TV channel, and they paired them with QR codes, but they paired them with contextually relevant QR codes. So if you were watching something that was maybe a handshake that you would see on sport, you would go to that QR code and it would take you to a sale, Black Friday sale for shoes or something like that, something related to the topic that you were watching to. So it was really clever use of contextual advertising and media. And I think it was a unanimous decision. And I know apparently there was an intense discussion by the jury, which was diverse, but they were really looking to highlight something that was unique, that wasn't necessarily Eurocentric, that was really leaning into how to use tech in a different way. And that sort of speaks to what we've been talking about for the past, 17 minutes, which is that tech is increasingly dominant. It can. And when it comes to media, increasingly important for reaching different audiences in more personalized ways, in ways in which you're interacting with the media. It's not just throwing stuff at your eyeballs. You're actually like, oh, there's a QR code that's useful to me. There's a sale going on, Black Friday sale. I'm getting something else out of it. It was a year in which, the cost of living crisis was obviously big in the UK, but also felt around the world with spiking inflation. So it was also useful. These were all sort of reasons that were cited by the jury as for why that won. I would also give a special shout out to that Sarah V ad with Michael Cera. That was a runner up for the media lines, but it also won the social/influencer line, and was just generally, I think, probably among all of the ad campaigns that I was aware of that were being talked about, it was probably the most talked about ad throughout the conference. Everyone just loved that ad. And so it got a special shout out, and shout out to Michael Cera for being hilarious.
Yeah, and that was an extremely high profile campaign, being involved in the Super Bowl in particular. So Maria, what else did we learn about the Media Lions category this year? What else stood out?
So Jem Lloyd-Williams, that's Mindshare's UK CEO, he was also a judge on the panel, and he wrote a piece for us, which you can read right now on our website. So he talks about tech in the sense that it's integrated into the work, i.e. the user can't see it, but they benefit from it. And that benefit part is important because it's about using tech that actually helps people as well, not just bring profit to the company. So a couple of really fun examples. There's one that's the Inflation Cookbook by Skip the Dishes in Canada. That's by Dentsu Creative. So basically, it's an app where you can track the prices of groceries. So I can only imagine it must be a bit like playing the stock market, but with apples and carrots. And the other bit of fun work, it's Gatorade in Argentina. They've created this app called Match Saver. So if you're a sporty person, since we've been talking a lot about sport, so basically lets you find a missing player. Or if you're a person wanting to play sport, you can find someone who needs a missing player, and you can, filter it by sport, by location, by day. So it helps people form full teams before they start playing. And then if you use the app to do that, you can also then unlock vouchers to get money off Gatorade, which is really cool.
It's interesting to hear you guys talk about what did well in the Media Lions, because I'm going to get on to I want to ask you guys, what was your main thing that you learned this week? But you've reminded me again of previous Cannes Lions. I think of last year, where, as you said before, there's so much chat about AI this week. I think what was always going to do really well in the Media Lions category was something that really showed how it was using artificial intelligence in some way, but in a meaningful, non-gimmicky way. From the conversations I had anyway at Cannes, there was a lot of conversations about boring AI, but I say that in a substantive way, because I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a couple of media owners, such as Vivo, where they've got all this AI-led categorization in the background, where they can take contextual moments, such as pick up brand logos and people like drinking a glass of something, and that's a potential sell to brands, and say that you can, if you're Nike, if you want to be aligned to any of our sports content, we can categorize all that for you. The main thing I took away were the big themes were essentially the same as last year. I in a piece today, I called it wasn't Cannes 2024, it was Cannes 2023 plus one, because the two main themes were still AI and new forms of democratized creativity. We were seeing a lot more of it, which was good. So it proved that maybe AI isn't the gimmick that some people like to deride it as. But so, yeah, what did you guys think? And Maria, what was your main highlight? What did you feel like you learned? Don't tell our audience it was all about the parties at Cannes.
It's definitely not all about the parties. I don't know if I can consider it a highlight. A kind of key learning, I guess, is this sustainability element. I just don't think we've cracked it yet. So obviously in the work itself, there's a lot of talk about sustainability, but what about the sustainability in the wider sense? So this is the biggest advertising festival in the world. We talk a lot about sustainability, and yet basically the whole world flies into Cannes to attend this festival. So on the one hand, of course, IRL meetings, all of that, and we talk about sustainability in the work, but how do we reconcile this idea of taking sustainability seriously in the work that we do as marketers, but also, in our actual day-to-day where we all en masse fly to Cannes for a week? I don't think we've cracked that one yet.
I mean, it's really important to have a global industry, and technology, whether you like it or not, makes us a global industry. We're able to communicate in this way. But yet we don't, as human beings, we want to be able to interact with one another and see the whites of each other's eyes. And yeah, how are we going to crack it unless we completely revolutionize the way that we travel, or we just change how humans are wired, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon. It's incredible. Jack, what did you learn, if anything?
Yeah, learned many things, including it is worth pacing yourself, because it's a long week and there's lots going on, and you can do so many different things and talk to so many different people. I guess a few other tidbits that I would want to share. First of all, the creator economy had a huge presence at Cannes this year. Someone told me that there was actually 3 times as many creators at Cannes this year just compared to last year, which is worth keeping an eye on, because we've mentioned some other social media companies today. A lot of the talent in the industry is now actually these individual creators that brands are wanting to work with, but maybe don't know enough about. And so a lot of them wanted to make their presence felt, which I thought was that's a really interesting trend to keep an eye on, because it's essentially saying the way that you have been doing advertising, the more traditional way, isn't necessarily sufficient in the future, especially when it's talking to younger people who really want a more personal experience, a more authentic, quote unquote, experience of consuming goods, talking with your brand. And so creators are really important to that. So I thought that was a particularly interesting thing to learn. I would also just add that there was a lot of post-cookie chatter. I did a panel while I was there, which will also be written up and online on the Media Leader next week, where sort of we were talking about the incoming deprecation of the cookies whenever that finally stops getting delayed. And it was interesting. I was told by James Rosewell from Movement for an Open Web that publishers and suppliers actually had been talking to Google this week and telling them that their post-cookie solution, called the Privacy Sandbox, isn't really working for them, and that there's going to need to just be a change solution. So that's something to keep an eye on in the more immediate, medium to short to medium term. So those were 2 tidbits. But I think if I had to overall take one lesson away, I think it's that there is a lot of really fantastic work that's done. Sometimes we don't think about it or talk about it enough, so it's good to celebrate it. But I agree with Maria. I don't know if there was the conversation around the need for the event in such a big way when we're also dealing with issues around sustainability is strong. I think there needs to be more of a conversation around sustainability. There were no protests this year, and there had been the past couple of years. At the same time, it is great to celebrate some really good work. It's great for the media industry to meet in person from around the world. because so many calls are now done virtually. And so it was really nice to have face-to-face with lots of different people. And I'm sure a lot of business was done in back rooms. I had a look in. I saw the Reddit CEO, Steve Huffman, was there. He was talking with clients. That type of business sometimes can only be done in person at these big sort of events. So it's still an important week, but I do think we need to be thinking about things a little bit more. Make sure those conversations don't go away that were very prominent over the past few years.
I mean, I talked to an agency person who had done Cannes for the first time and said similar things to you guys in terms of the first impressions, and then being mindful of looking at sustainability, or maybe it's an equity question from the other way. He was like, how do I go back to the office next week and tell junior members of my team that they can't have a pay rise? Because the thing that we haven't talked about is it's a very tough year for the industry. It's tough out there for a lot of agencies and media owners. And when you see this kind of opulence and backslapping and awards winning, it doesn't sit well with a lot of people who are working in their offices and not being a part of that, and being told that the company's taking some tough decisions. So we do have to be mindful of that as well. But to your point, the market is changing. And what I really liked is that Cannes Lions, for the first time this year, they launched the Creator Pass, which, to your exact point, Jack, the recognition that brands are working with ever more sorts of different creators, influencers, for example, and Cannes has tried really hard to bring those people into the tent, because this industry is not just about a bunch of ad agencies doing TV ads. Even though it's still about that, it's so much more than that. Lots, and the sustainability thing, you can't get around it. There was a lot of rain at Cannes this week. A lot of people, if you're in London, for example, you've had a much sunnier weather over the week than Cannes. There was, I can't help thinking it might have something to do with climate change. Stay tuned, listeners, for our interviews with lots of people from Cannes and getting their impressions, including the Conscious Advertising Network, who I can tell you had a lot to say about sustainability of the festival. That's all the time we have. Jack, Maria, thank you so much. And we will have lots more content from Cannes Lions, from the Media Leader, over the course of the next few days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Omar.
Thanks again for listening to the Media Leader podcast. If you like what you hear, guess what? You can read our stuff at our website, themedialeader.co.uk, where you can sign up to our daily newsletter in the UK of analysis, opinion and commentary about what's going on in media and advertising. You can also find us on YouTube. We are posting video interviews and clips from our live events. And don't forget to check out our LinkedIn page, which is often a very interesting way to see what people in the industry are saying about our articles and the issues we write about. Anyway, get back to work. Catch you next time. Bye bye.